Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen on air, live, or online at iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, or download the WHPC app so you can hear all the great shows here at WHPC. In other words, join us on any of your favorite podcast locations. Herbally Yours consistently brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'd love to bring on board our illustrious guest, Mimi Prunella Hernandez, and she is an herbalist and author of the beautiful new book, National Geographic Herbal, which is actually a National Geographic book, so you know what a fabulous high quality it is, and that the information they offer is always top-notch. And that's why they chose Mimi Hernandez to be the author. She is an herbalist, and her wealth of knowledge, unwavering dedication, and genuine love for all things herbal, she has made a significant impact in the field of herbal medicine. For over a decade, Mimi has served as the executive director of the American Herbalists Guild, where she worked tirelessly to ensure that herbalists have a strong professional community to support their work. Mimi also received the Botanical Excellence Award from the American Botanical Council, which is a prestigious honor that recognizes Mimi as a Mark Blumenthal, who's been our guest here many times, herbal community builder. So thank you so much for being our guest today, Mimi Hernandez.
Thank you, Ellen. It's always so wonderful to have conversations with you about herbs, and thank you for that very warm introduction.
Well, let's go back in time to little girl Mimi. Tell us what path meandered you over to become such a preeminent herbalist?
Oh, what a great question. Well, I think from an early age, I just had a strong interest in science. And I was that little girl that did the science fair in third grade. My science fair project was on growing an avocado plant from a pit. And believe it or not, it actually worked, because now I try to grow avocados from pits and they seldom work. But when I was in third grade, I did a science fair project on a plant that sparked interest in plants. But I've also just always been like real academically inclined. I just love school and I love my science classes. And, along with that, I had a deep interest in how the body works. And I really pursued, understanding everything about the body, from cell biology to pathophysiology. And that just along the way opened doors into other sciences like ecology and ornithology and botany. And so I just really loved reading everything I could get my hands on. And I knew from an early stage in life that I wanted to be a healer. And at that point, I thought, well, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. And my family was really excited about that prospect, as I'm a first generation American. And along the way, just, getting my hands on everything I could about healing and the body and nutrition and all this. As I prepared for medical school, I had this epiphany that I really wanted to learn real world medicine. And to me, that was herbal medicine. And that was greatly informed by influence from my grandparents, especially my grandmothers, both from Colombia and from Mexico. Then it just kind of came full circle back into tradition and all the things I observed growing up when my grandma was working with herbs and helping to heal her neighbors and treating little ailments and having chats with them, and even the spiritual context of of illness, the more superstitious elements that she was immersed in, had an impact on me. But I didn't know it until I was an adult, until I was ready for training and harnessing like my specific path. And then I was like, wow, I've been exposed to this. I've been like the little girl on my grandmother's apron strings, just watching how she works with herbs in such a reverent way. That really influenced the direction I took. And out of college, when I decided I wanted to be an herbalist, going back to my family and saying, hey, guess what? I'm not going to medical school. I'm actually going to become an herbalist.
So they may have not been thrilled, I bet.
They were like, what? That's, of course, they're really proud of me today, for sure. I've definitely carved a path, but it took a lot of putting things together. Ellen, as you know, it's a different path for every herbalist. It's not such a standard academic path, for everyone. And so you kind of have to piece it together and do it, in your own way. And so here I am.
Well, thank you for sharing. I want to take a little aside because of that thing you said about the avocado. So this is something really interesting to me because I want to share that my partner, Dr. Eugene Zamperone, who we've written most of our books together, he's often a guest here on Herbal Yours, and we have another show also called The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. And he's a professor, and he was doing an experiment with a group of naturopathic students. And you probably know that pineapple is known to have bromelain in it. Mm-hmm. So he brought pineapple into the classroom, and he went to extract it through the normal extraction procedure that you would use to extract bromelain, and there was no bromelain. And that's ringing a bell to me about you saying that you used to grow avocados all the time from avocado pits, but now it didn't grow. Well, he went back to the organic store in downtown Seattle, and he bought an organic pineapple, and the students were immediately able to extract out bromelain. So I'm wondering if those avocados, you probably wouldn't know, were the bioengineered avocados, or why would that be the case that as a young girl, and you're not that old, you used to be able to grow trees and now you can't out of the same kind of procedure?
Right. Yeah. So I'll have to pay closer attention next time I try that. Absolutely. And my husband loves growing pineapples just in pots on the porch. So I'm going to have to share that little, that experience with him.
Yeah, everything is so connected for sure. Now, of course, we're talking about you and your experiences being an herbalist. And like you said, professionally, there are degrees to get where you can be an herbalist as well. And I would say the two I know of is actually a licensed naturopathic physician. They go a deep dive into becoming pretty knowledgeable herbalists, and also in acupuncture. If you get an acupuncture degree, but along with an herbal component, they don't know like we would, like you would, really hands-on herbalism in the field, but they do learn a lot about using herbs for their therapeutic value as an intervention.
I agree. And even like in traveling to other countries and seeing how like medical herbalists practice, it just really blows me away that there's not as much of an emphasis on wildcrafting and growing your own herbs and learning how to make herbal medicine from herbs, like right from your garden and that you've picked. And, it's more like capsules and things like that. And, I think I've learned that American herbalism is so grounded. Like we like getting our hands dirty. We like bringing things to the kitchen and messing it up and experimenting and building our own apothecaries and helping neighbors. And it's just such a beautiful herbalism in my mind. And I feel like some professions have a little bit of a disconnect with that part of hands-on herbalism, formulation, specifically for the person in front of you, a sense of energetics and differential assessment. That's so important in my eyes, to have that full breadth of herbal experience.
Yes, I agree. And that's why I actually give plant walks. I give plant walks outside where we go on a walk and we gather wild plants and learn to identify them, which ones are medicinal, which ones are poisonous. That's a good thing to know if you're going to go out there. And then how to actually prepare them into natural medicines that you would use for yourself and your family at home. It's one of my favorite things to do. Let's talk about your beautiful book, the National Geographic Herbal. As my listeners know, we do shows every single week. We have since 1987, if you can imagine how many thousands. And if you go to Herbal Yours, you can get the podcast. And we have so many versions up on the internet now. And of course, long before there was internet, we were doing this. But a lot of people, I tell them, you know what? Don't bother mailing your book because you know how many books I would have, right? But your book, I specifically wanted, and it is so beautifully done.
It is beautiful. I was blown away. I mean, even the cover, it's like this linen type of fabric, textured. It's the imagery throughout the book, the photography, the illustrations, which are somewhat like antique, vintage illustrations throughout. It really is such a beautiful layout and just a nice, hardcover book. Nice for a table, but better to read it, right?
Well, you have such great information in there. There's so many chapters, graphs, ways to decide how to use herbal medicine for yourself and your family, tons of wonderful recipes. I mean, it's endlessly useful. I'm going to ask you a question that might be hard, but you can just do whatever pops into your mind. What is your favorite chapter for someone to look at first?
Ooh, oh, that's such a great question. Well, it's got to be chapter one because it's rooted in the sensory experience. And I really think that, as we were talking about earlier about that full breath herbalist experience, we know herbs almost intimately, how they smell, how they make us feel, how they taste, how they sometimes you can hear them if you're in the woods on your plant walks, you can hear the rattle or the pop. And it's just, that soft mucilage and those airy, fragrant aromatics. And I really just wanted to open up right away with that lens of the herbal experience. But it's not just about the sensory experience, it's about translating that sensory experience to knowledge about how those herbs work. So, how bitters work, how aromatics work, that soft mucilage, there's a role for that in our herbal recipes and kind of just opening up eyes to like, this is where it begins.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to tell our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio or any of your favorite podcast venues. For more information on today's guest or topic, you could actually send us an email at whpc@ncc.edu. And thank you so much for joining us today for Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College. And we are with our guest today, Mimi and Hernandez, and she is the author of this beautiful new book called National Geographic Herbal, which you can very easily just find kind of anywhere, all your favorite book sellers. Now, I know that you already shared with us, Mimi, in terms of your background, that you're first generation of a Latino origin. And what are some of the folk medicine that you would say that you inherited and now you know so much more about because you've also investigated it, using it for yourself, using it for your family, and a deep dive into the botanical pharmacology?
Ooh, that's a very multifaceted question, but yes, well, I think in terms of like the tradition that closely resonates with my background is curanderismo. And that is a kind of a Latin American folk healing tradition. which obviously looks at a lot of traditional herbs and views the body in the context of the connection between the soul and the body because they're not separate in Latin American folk traditions. And so the goal of the practitioner is to reconnect the body with the soul. In Western science, we might look in terms of like PTSD or post-traumatic stress in a similar way, where there's things that have happened to us through life that may disconnect the soul from the body or create this series of stress responses or chronic stress responses. The approach is multifaceted and involves, stress alleviating activities like sacred bathing or, nourishment, community engagement, support, spirituality, limpias, which are almost like spiritual cleanses that we do with herbs. And so that's, some of the more, protection, protecting your psyche and your energy through herbs.
All of those are excellent and really interesting in terms of how you related it to PTSD. Let's just take a little deeper dive, like what herbs might be used in the tradition you mentioned, limpias, which is actually very common in those cultures. So what are some ways they would use herbs and some herbs they might use for limpias?
Oh, so, there's a trilogy of herbs that I was recommended once by a Ecuadorian Amazon healer, and that was lemon balm, lemon verbena, and lemongrass, all three together. And not only as a cleanse, I mean, obviously you can kind of form a broom out of lemongrass and use it to sweep the body, and it just feels good and reinvigorating. I mean, I don't know the science behind it, but
That's okay.
you put your affirmation into it, and you're like, just help me and wipe this all away. I mean, it's very helpful, but also as a tea. It's just really de-escalating to the nervous system. It just really helps relax and focus and be more in tune and, really de-escalates that stress response. And it's lovely too. So it puts you in like a routine if you're drinking the tea on a daily basis. It's very nourishing. The lemon balm is very awakening for the brain. It really, in science, has helped improve cognition. And so, that's probably my favorite intervention, if you will.
That's a beautiful discussion. So let's just paint a picture for our listeners. Like you would have somebody basically lay down, perhaps on something like a massage table. They may not have a massage table, but something. And it's, of course, you are an herbalist, and you said, well, obviously you can just brush this grass like a broom. Well, of course, I know it because I know what the plant looks like. A lot of people may not know, but if you did ever see the plant or just Google it, lemongrass, it's like a long, very stiff kind of grass. And it has this delicious lemony flavor, too. And what we do find so interesting in so many of these herbs that are used in what we'll say is a cleansing ritual, whether it be one from Latin America or whether it be one that might have been used by, let's say, Salem witches in Massachusetts, because very often they use a lot of similar kind of stuff. Either way, when you evaluate those kinds of plants that are called cleansing, that ward off evil influences, invariably they have a very high level of antimicrobial activity, which is such an interesting mirror because don't forget, in the old days, people didn't have microscopes. And they would say, things happen that weren't great in terms of illness, in terms of depression, whatever, and have no concept of it being linked to a microorganism, yet they were using herbs and it worked. But now when we go deeper, we go, that it's also antimicrobial, so that makes sense.
So we feel better.
Yeah, really.
And there's like the resins, like frankincense, that's another. I feel like every culture has their version of these aromatic, cleansers, if you will.
Yeah, when you're talking about frankincense in regular Catholicism, they burn that. And then in Judaism, they have something that they burn every Saturday after Shabbos. That's like braided, and it's also an herbal cleanser. So, you're absolutely right. No matter what culture we delve down into, they have always had they're ritual, they're spiritual, but they're herbal. And when we go one level more, if we bother to do a study, we can sometimes look at the actual biological mechanism that makes it all work together and make sense. Let's talk about some of your recipes. You have marvelous recipes in your book.
Ooh, well, I think, one of my favorites is pretty simple. It's in the cayenne section, and one of the reasons that I included the recipe is because it's just such a staple in my family, and it's called Colombian ají. And ají is like, it translates to like a pepper sauce or a pepper marinade, and it really is just finely chopped, jalapeno peppers or even like red chili peppers fresh in a brine of like vinegar, water, and cilantro and onions and tomatoes. So it sounds like a salsa, right? And so when National Geographic first put an image in that section, it was like salsa. And I was like, that is not Colombian ají. And they tried and they could not find imagery of it. So the photo of Colombian ají in the book is actually my one and probably my first published photograph that I took myself. They sent me all these tips on aesthetics, and I went and staged a whole like photo session because it's more watery, and a lot of it is just that brine, and it's just so fresh and peak and invigorating. We talk about fire cider a lot, and I would say that's very similar to our, in a way, it's kind of like our version of our daily, invigorating spice blend.
So it's like a hot sauce.
It is. It is.
Isn't that great that you got to actually produce it and put your own picture in the book, too?
I had to insist because I was like, this is so important to my family. This is the one, like, I put my foot down. I was like, I really need a picture of Colombian ají in there.
I think that's fabulous. And then, it's something that will be forever because the book is a beautiful published piece. Now, is this book National Geographic Herbal? I know people can find it anywhere books are sold. Is it also available as an ebook?
Not yet. Not yet. I will say, hopefully that's in the works. Right now, though, I did just post it on my website because I have a couple cases here. So I have signed copies straight from my hands on my website, which is Mimi Prunella Hernandez.com. So
I don't have that website, so that's a good thing you're telling us that. Not the Ponderland. Tell me that new one again.
Mimi Prunella Hernandez.com.
Okay, good.
The Ponderland goes to the same website. So, if that's the one you have, the Ponderland is the native plant sanctuary that we steward here in Western North Carolina.
That's another fabulous topic. So just tell us a little bit about that.
It is my passion, really, is to, plant sustainability, native medicinal plant conservation. It's just so important, especially with this huge interest in herbal medicine and social media and everyone going out to forage and eat plants. We do need to keep our attention on preserving these native species so that they're available for future generations. And I think one easy thing that landowners can do is research that process of protecting plants on your land, going to United Plant Savers website where they have the Botanical Sanctuary Network. And, if you can show that, there's medicinal native plants on your land and that you're educating about them and you're protecting them, you can apply to be a part of that network and get that sign, for your woods or your yard. And it's just, something that really warms my heart. And that every day I go out in the woods or even out around, I have a pond here and a meadow. As much as I've been involved in plants all my life, I go out all the time and find new to me native plant species that I've never seen or heard of. And that's really humbling. And it's just such a treasure trove of learning, wisdom, and plant protection.
Well, likewise, it's a never-ending adventure. So, Mimi, what is the best place for people to find you? Share both of your websites again, please.
Oh, sure. So my website is www.mimiprunellaHernandez.com or theponderland.com. Both of those go to my beautiful website, and you can find me on Instagram also by my name, Mimi Prunella Hernandez.
And I want to thank you so much for being our guest today on Herbally Yours.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure, Ellen.
And people can find you at either of those websites or just look up that great book. It's widely available, National Geographic Herbal. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi. Please find me and get in touch through naturalnurse.com. Inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.
Hi, I'm Ice-T. As a veteran, I know that for many former servicemen and women, the battle doesn't always end when they come home. Every day, 184 veterans are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, and sadly, 20 take their own lives. When nothing else helps, professionally trained service dogs can. American Humane, serving the U.S. military for over 100 years, rescues animals in need of forever homes and trains them to become free, life-saving service dogs for our nation's veterans. If you're a veteran or know a veteran struggling with post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, please go to AmericanHumane.org to learn about their Pups for Patriots program. Let's give our veterans a fighting chance.